So I did mine on how much NASA is worth, and this isn't necessarily talking in like a dollar sense, it's kind of just its worth altogether. So first of all, what is NASA? It was founded in 1958 and it's the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and the US budget for 2019 was $19.6 billion, which is about $360 million more than the 2018 budget for NASA. NASA's contributions over time has developed a lot of technology that's caused like spin-off technology, like ski goggles, cell phone cameras, use a complementary metal oxide semiconductor, which is like a kind of sensor that goes into the camera that just makes it so it doesn't require as much power to perform. And then the EPIC, which is the Earth Polychromatic Imaging Camera, which is on Discover. Discover is a space observatory, and the EPIC is the camera that's on the observatory. So it basically goes out into space, and from about 1 million miles away, it takes pictures of the Earth. A lot of the technology they've developed have gone into things like firefighter gear, water filtration, and then there's tons of more. So arguments against the funding of NASA is, so like I said before, they get about $19.6 billion was their budget this year, where it's like, if you look here, in some parts of the United States, we have counties that have more than 30% of their population living in poverty. And it brings up the question, should we be spending this much money on sending things into space if there are people here, especially in our own country, that are suffering? And then to further that, we talk about how expensive it is. I mean, in 2011, NASA launched a $280 million probe, and this was only a couple weeks after Japan had their big earthquake that was followed by a tsunami. And it's like, and this was around the same time that there was a lot of poverty in Uganda that was being televised, and there are all these things that we're aware of and that we see, and then it was kind of like watching these countries suffer and then sending something so expensive and outlandish into space, and it was kind of just like, it was a little out there. And then this is another argument, which is how small and how little of an impact the things that we spend money on and what they can do in space. So if I like
this is a real life lore.
Let's go.
Theme. Voyager 1 is currently traveling at 17 kilometers every single second, but even at that speed, it won't break out of the reach of our solar system for another 30,000 years. Once we go beyond the solar system, we arrive in our interstellar neighborhood. Here we shift to the light year unit of measurement, which is the distance that light travels in a full Earth year, or about 9.461 trillion kilometers. The star Proxima Centauri here is the closest other star to us other than our sun, but it's still 4.24 light years away from us. To put that into perspective, if it was heading in the right direction, it would still take Voyager 1 over 70,000 years to reach it. In other words, if you drove your car at 100
Okay, so basically that furthers the point where it's like, why are we spending so much money on things that have such little reach and such little impact? Where it's like, we're not even going to be able to see, if ever, if the things that we send out reach other places, other worlds. And then arguments for the funding of NASA is, like I mentioned earlier, the EPIC camera that's on Discover. So it does a lot of weather monitoring. Not only is it sent into space to take pictures of Earth, it's sent there so it can kind of like determine, so it analyzes cloud formations, it can see wildfires from space, and that's something that can help everybody everywhere. It's not just taking pictures of America. And then it does like cause a lot of spin-off technology. A lot of the things that they develop is inspiration for a lot of different technology that can be implemented outside of the space community. And it gives us a better understanding of Earth. Not sending probes onto Mars and the moon isn't just for fun. Like, they don't do it just to see what's out there some of the time. A lot of it has to do with they can go and observe other places, and a lot of them have the same elements that we have here on Earth, and we can see how they interact with each other and kind of apply that to different kind of different environments here on Earth, and it tells us, learning about what's out in space can tell us some of what it's here on Earth. And then this is a quote from the book I read, The Future of Humanity. It says, "If we scan all of the life forms that have ever existed on Earth, we find that more than 99.9% of them have eventually become extinct." And I thought this was interesting because we don't really think about all of the species that have become extinct. When I think about extinct species, I think dinosaurs and like the dodo, but you don't think about all the other species that there were between them, all the different periods of time with thousands of different species. And I feel, and the funding of NASA, the argument for that would be, if we're not fighting toward going somewhere else or toward exploring other places, we're just letting the inevitable kind of come upon us. And then also arguments for the funding of NASA, it's in human nature. I mean, I meant like these are a couple of the explorers throughout time that, yeah, they've kind of explored here on Earth, but that was a different time, and now we have less of Earth to explore, although there is some. We kind of want to push towards that, and it leaves us this whole new landscape. We have outer space. We have Marco Polo, Ferdinand Magellan, James Cook, Leif Erikson, and Vasco da Gama. It's like they've explored here, and it's kind of in their nature. They're all from different periods of time, and we haven't lost that human nature even today. And then my conclusion: NASA is very important and should continue to receive as much funding as possible from the federal government. And then this guy right here, he is the 19th chairman for NASA. He's kind of the administrator. He overwatches everything. But yeah, I think that they should receive as much funding as possible. There's very few things that the government funds other than like public education that kind of spurs like just creativity and like development on its own. It doesn't need something else to stand on. That's what it is. And then here are my works cited, and then yeah.
Any questions?
What do you think is the most important thing that NASA does?
I think the most important thing that NASA does is probably observing other planets and taking pictures of other planets. I mean, like the technology that they develop can be a lot better implemented on Earth, and that's really important. But I don't know. I guess this is just like personally. I think that that's like the most interesting part, and that's kind of like the whole allure of NASA. If they didn't have that, people don't want to like fund a program that just like makes technology. Like they want something more to it, and I think that something more is like the unknown, and that's what they're going for. Sydney?
In your opinion, do you think they should like stop doing those like expeditions where they're like sending out satellites that like we're not going to be able to like find anything for like 7,000 years?
Those ones are tricky because it's like they can go out into space, and I know that they can take pictures the further and further they go. But yeah, it is rough when you think about what else the money could be spent on. But yeah, I still think that they should do that. They don't send them out just for nothing, like just like blank into space. Usually they have like a purpose when they're going out there, and a lot of it is taking pictures of the things around them.
Thank you.